The Phoenix Principle, how rebuilding from nothing creates extraordinary lives. Have you ever stood in the ashes of what was once your life and wondered, how do I even begin again? That moment when everything familiar has burned away might actually be the most powerful position you'll ever stand in. I know this sounds counterintuitive, almost cruel in its optimism. But after my recent conversation with the remarkable Krishann Garrett, I've become convinced that our greatest potential often emerges precisely when we have nothing left to lose. Krishann isn't just another success story. She's a revolutionary force who rebuilt her entire existence from absolute zero after experiencing devastating trauma. A woman who transformed from victim to victor, not by denying her wounds, but by alchemizing them into purpose. Her journey embodies what I've come to call the Phoenix Principle, the extraordinary capacity to rise from complete devastation with greater wisdom, deeper compassion, and more authentic power than before. What makes Krishann's story so exceptional isn't just her personal triumph, it's how she's created ripples of transformation that continue to change lives across communities. She reminds us that resilience isn't simply about personal survival, it's about creating new possibilities for collective healing. But here's what fascinates me most about Christian and women like her: they don't just survive their personal apocalypses, they use them as launching pads to create ripple effects that transform entire communities. Let me ask you something. What if the worst thing that ever happened to you isn't actually your greatest liability? What if it's your most valuable asset? I know. When you're in the middle of the fire, that perspective feels impossible, maybe even offensive. Trust me, I get it. But stay with me. The revolutionary rise of Black women entrepreneurs in America tells us something profound about human resilience. Despite facing the double burden of racial and gender bias, despite encountering systemic barriers to capital that would stop most people cold, Black women have become the fastest growing demographic of entrepreneurs in this country. This isn't happening because the path suddenly got easier. It's happening because necessity, determination, and vision are combining in extraordinary ways. When traditional doors remain firmly closed, these women aren't waiting for permission, they're building their own houses. Consider this remarkable trend. Black women entrepreneurs are leading a hidden revolution that's reshaping America's economic future. They face systemic barriers to capital, lack of representation in business leadership, and the double burden of racial and gender bias. Yet instead of being defeated by these challenges, they're creating innovative business models, leveraging community support networks, and developing resilience based leadership approaches. The results: Black women are now the fastest growing demographic of entrepreneurs, generating billions in economic impact. This movement emerged from a history of Black women creating economic opportunities when traditional paths were closed, dating back generations. These entrepreneurs have created thousands of jobs, revitalized communities, and pioneered new business approaches that are transforming entire economic ecosystems. During my conversation with Krishann, she shared how rebuilding from nothing forced her to question every assumption about success, security, and self worth. When you have to reconstruct your life brick by brick, you become incredibly intentional about what you're building and why. There's a clarity that emerges from catastrophe, a ruthless prioritization that cuts through the noise of shoulds and supposed tos. The data tells us something fascinating. Businesses founded by Black women are not just surviving, they're thriving. But the numbers only tell part of the story. What the spreadsheets can't capture is the spiritual alchemy that happens when a woman transforms her deepest wounds into her most powerful work. When she stops asking, why me? And starts asking, what now? This is what Krishann did. This is what thousands of women are doing every day, often without recognition or fanfare. I call it the multiplier effect. When one woman's personal transformation becomes the catalyst for community wide change. When Black women entrepreneurs succeed, their impact extends far beyond individual balance sheets. They create economic ecosystems that lift entire communities. They face limited access to traditional funding, fewer mentorship opportunities, and the pressure of being the first or the only in many spaces. Yet they respond by creating alternative funding mechanisms, building robust support networks, and developing innovative business models that prioritize community impact. These entrepreneurs aren't just building businesses, they're creating economic ecosystems that lift entire communities. This approach builds on the historical tradition of Black women pooling resources and supporting community development through entrepreneurship. Many have transformed from survivors of difficult circumstances to creators of economic opportunity for others, creating a ripple effect that addresses systemic inequities while building generational wealth and opportunity. During our conversation, Krishann described how her own healing journey eventually became a blueprint for helping others navigate similar terrain. What began as personal survival evolved into a mission to ensure no one walks that path alone. This pattern repeats across industries and geographies. Women who have faced limited access to traditional funding create alternative financing mechanisms. Those who struggled without mentors become the guides they wish they'd had. Those who felt the isolation of being the first or the only build robust support networks to ensure they're not the last. There's a West African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. But what I've observed through women like Krishan is a third option. When you've been broken open by life, you create a new path that allows everyone to go both fast and far. This is the village renaissance, a model of success that prioritizes community support and collective advancement over individual achievement. Black women entrepreneurs are pioneering this new model that prioritizes community support and collective advancement. They face traditional business models that don't account for community needs or their unique strengths. Their solution? Creating innovative approaches that leverage community connections, cultural strengths, and collaborative economics. These entrepreneurs are building businesses that succeed financially while creating social impact and community transformation. This approach draws on traditional African concepts of Ubuntu and collective success, reimagined for modern business contexts. Many have created thriving enterprises that serve as anchors in their communities while achieving personal success, changing how success is defined in business by centering community impact alongside profit. It's not just beautiful, it's revolutionary. In traditional business frameworks, success is often measured by how high you can climb, how much you can accumulate, how far you can get ahead of others. But what if success actually looks like bringing everyone along with you? What if the true measure of achievement isn't how high you climb, but how many you lift? Krishan embodied this principle when she transformed her personal healing into a platform for community healing. She understood intuitively that her story gained its greatest power not in the telling, but in the application, in creating pathways for others to navigate their own rebuilding processes. Now, I want to be crystal clear about something. This isn't about romanticizing trauma or hardship. It's not about suggesting that suffering is somehow necessary for greatness. That's a dangerous narrative that has been used to justify too many injustices. What I am saying is that when devastation finds you, as it finds us all in different ways, you have more agency than you realize in how that experience shapes your future. The question isn't whether you'll face fire in your life. The question is what you'll do with the ashes. Will you remain stuck in the story of what was lost? Or will you use those very ashes as the foundation for something new, something that couldn't have existed before? This is where resilience transcends mere survival when becomes transformation. It's not about bouncing back to who you were before, it's about bouncing forward into who you're becoming. During our conversation, Krishann shared a moment of profound realization. I understood that I couldn't go back to who I was before everything fell apart. That person, with all her assumptions and securities, was gone. The only way was forward into someone I hadn't yet imagined becoming. That's the secret that phoenixes know. Resurrection isn't about returning to your former state, it's about emerging as something altogether new. So, what does this mean for you? Maybe you're standing in your own ashes right now. Maybe you're facing a loss that feels insurmountable, a relationship, a job, a dream, a sense of security. Maybe you're wondering how you'll ever find your way forward. If that's you, I want you to hear me clearly. This moment of devastation, painful as it is, contains the seeds of your most authentic power. Not because suffering is somehow noble, but because rebuilding requires you to get ruthlessly honest about what matters most. It demands that you distinguish between what's essential and what's expendable. It forces you to identify your true strengths, not the ones on your resume, but the ones in your spirit. As Krishann said, when everything external was stripped away, I finally had to confront who I really was beneath all the achievements and accolades. And that's when I discovered strengths I never knew I had. Your past circumstances don't determine your future potential. Starting from scratch isn't a setback, it's often the foundation for extraordinary growth. I challenge you today. Look at what you consider your greatest wound, your most devastating setback. Now ask yourself, what if this isn't the end of my story, but rather its most powerful beginning? What if this fire isn't meant to destroy you, but to forge you into something stronger, more authentic, more purposeful than before? The truth is, we all face fires in this life. We all know what it means to watch something we valued burn to the ground. The question isn't whether you'll face destruction, it's what you'll choose to create from it. Will you remain defined by what was lost, or will you become defined by what you build next? The phoenix doesn't deny the reality of the fire. It doesn't pretend the flames didn't hurt. It simply refuses to let destruction have the final word. That's the invitation before each of us, to acknowledge our wounds without being limited by them, to transform our greatest challenges into our most powerful contributions, to rise not despite our brokenness, but through it. Because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't about avoiding the fall. They're about how magnificently we rise afterward. And in that rising, we discover we're capable of far more than merely rebuilding our own lives. We become architects of new possibilities for everyone around us. That's the ultimate promise of the Phoenix Principle, that your greatest devastation might become the foundation for not just your transformation, but for the transformation of your entire community. As Christian's journey so powerfully demonstrates, when we rise from our ashes with purpose and vision, we don't just rebuild lives, we reimagine them.